A very, very special good morning to everyone out there. It's that day again, different time, same show. It's In the Trenches with Jeffrey Dubroff and Garrett Schwartz. I'm Jeffrey Dubroff. Alongside me, my partner in crime, Garrett Schwartz. Garrett, how are you today?
I'm doing great. We got a fun show today.
We really do. We have a lot of stuff lined up, and I'm just going to dive right into it. Obviously, we're at a time in sports where the only thing on is baseball, and let's face it, talking about baseball doesn't get us anywhere in the ratings in this world. So we're going to kick it right off with where we left off, the NBA. And I want to talk about an issue that's been bugging me for a long time, and that issue is the Chicago Bulls. So obviously, the last time we were on the show, we talked about the NBA draft, what we thought was going to happen, and some of the things we predicted came out to fruition. Some of the other things did not. But one thing we did not see was the Bulls trade. So if you don't know, we'll catch you up to speed. The Chicago Bulls traded Jimmy Butler, their so-called face of the franchise, and their 16th pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves in return for Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and their 7th overall pick. And I'm going to go into it right away. This is once again another disastrous move by the Chicago Bulls front office run by John Paxson and Gar Forman. You're looking at this move, and I think it is evident of how valuable a player like Jimmy Butler is these days when you are looking at how much teams are trying to value these 3-and-D players. Look how many teams are going after Jimmy Butler. Look how many teams are going after Paul George currently. Yes, they are obviously all-star caliber players. They are very, very good players that are going to bring a lot to your team. But they are more than just that. They are 3-and-D players, which are very rare to find these days. You see them in a Draymond Green, a Kawhi Leonard, a LeBron James, maybe a Kevin Durant, a Klay Thompson. There's a handful. They're rare. They got rid of a blood diamond and in return got fool's gold. It to me is just so dumbfounding that once again Gar Forman, the general manager, makes a move that makes no sense to me. And not only do they do that, with that 7th overall pick, they draft Lauri Markkanen of Arizona, the guy who averaged 15 points a game, the power forward. And I know you can't judge a player right after he's drafted, but you just traded a transcendent athlete that you just claimed to be the face of your franchise for Lauri Markkanen. It is bewildering to me. This once again just shows the Bulls organization is a mess. And it starts at the top. Like I said, John Paxson, Gar Forman. Gar Forman is the same general manager who got rid of Tom Thibodeau over personal issues. Rather than acting like a man and sorting those issues out maturely, he decided, you know what? I'm just going to get rid of him. I don't want to have to deal with this issue. It's easier to just do away with my issues rather than dealing with them face on. It, to me, once again, is absolutely dumbfounding to me. This Jimmy Butler trade, this team has never recovered essentially since Derrick Rose's ACL injury. They have not been competitive in the playoffs. They haven't been competitive in the East. They spent $16.5 million a year on Jimmy Butler. They dubbed him the face of the franchise, and they dumped him. Now what are they trying to do? They're trying to build around Lauri Markkanen with aging veterans.
Hold on there for a second.
And I'm going to let you get in because I'm getting a headache from how bewildered I am from this. Because I think it is just unbelievable that they could let this happen. They let go of a prized possession and essentially got nothing in return.
So I think this trade shows... I want to make 2 points about this trade. Number one, I don't think it's such a lose for the Bulls as everyone's making it seem like. And I'll tell you why. I think they definitely got some good pieces in there. Zach LaVine, he's 23 years old. Chris Dunn, last year, number 5 overall pick for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, a really young guy at 22 years old. And again, we don't know what's going to happen with that number 7 pick this year. I think if Chicago doesn't give away the 16 pick to Minnesota and then they have 2 first-rounders in addition to getting LaVine and Butler, it doesn't seem like such a ridiculous trade. But again, we have to look at what Dunn and LaVine have done through their first year, and I guess what LaVine his first 3 years. Dunn, he's only been in the league, again, 1 season, playing 17 minutes a game, 3.5 points per game. I don't understand why the Timberwolves and why the NBA is willing to count out this guy. It's been one season, and he was a number 5 overall pick in the draft. This guy could turn into something special for all we know. And Zach LaVine, before tearing his ACL this year, was averaging 18.9 points per game in his third season. Through his first 3 seasons, he's averaging 13.7 points per game. Now, I want you to put that in perspective really quick. If I compare Zach LaVine's numbers through his first 3 seasons to Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, 2 of the 4 MVP finalists for tonight, the points per game are higher. Harden averaged 12.9 points per game through his first 3 seasons. Kawhi Leonard, 12.8 points per game through his first 3 seasons. The numbers for LaVine are promising. This guy could turn into something special. However, I want to move on to my bigger point. There's a reason that Chicago is willing to make this trade for what NBA executives and rivals and announcers and media people are saying is a steal. And it's because of the Golden State Warriors effect. Because clearly, it's very apparent that the market for Jimmy Butler was not as big as we thought it to be. Now look, the Boston Celtics are Danny Ainge is sitting on 7 first-round draft picks next year. You're telling me that guy couldn't think of a trade or put together a better offer than what the Wolves offered him? Now look, Jeffrey.
That more goes into the characteristics of Danny Ainge not liking to make big shots, we've seen, though.
But listen, at this point, NBA teams, they're not willing to pull the trigger for a superstar like Butler. They're saying, look, why should we give away our young assets for Jimmy Butler, who's obviously a young player, but why should we give away our young assets for a superstar now when it won't matter because we can't compete against the Golden State Warriors? So my argument is, yeah, we can blame Chicago, but really we need to be blaming the Golden State Warriors because they're making teams do ridiculous things.
Here is my argument with that, and it goes back to the Chicago Bulls, and I want to touch about the stats that you presented for Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine was playing on a team where there was no veteran presence, so he had the ability to kind of be an offensive juggernaut along with Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns. James Harden and Kawhi Leonard were not averaging the amount of points per game because at the time James Harden was a 6-man on the Oklahoma City Thunder with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Kawhi Leonard was playing on a team that was still led by Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker. And in regards to Zach LaVine, I think it makes the trade even worse. You trade for a Zach LaVine fresh off an ACL injury? I want to read you a stat. Derrick Rose tore his ACL in the 2011-2012 season. He was averaging 21.8 points per game that year. He didn't play in the next year. The year after, 15.9. The year after, 17. The year after, 16. That is an injury that is very, very hard to come back from, especially in a sport where you're moving very laterally in the sport of basketball.
Do you know the last time that a third-year player who suffered a major season-ending injury, or do you know the last player to average, at least 18 points and in his third season suffer a season-ending injury? That was a guy named Steph Curry. All I'm saying is, in the NBA, we're so willing to pull the plug on these guys in their first year, their second year, their third year. The perfect example is D'Angelo Russell with the Lakers, right? Obviously shipped away by the Lakers last week, shedding the disastrous contract of Timothy Mozgov. But let's not forget that 2 years ago, just like 19-year-old Lonzo Ball, D'Angelo Russell was the number 2 overall pick for the Lakers. And you know what Magic Johnson was saying about D'Angelo Russell 2 seasons ago? He goes, quote, I like D'Angelo Russell because he can shoot, he's explosive, and he makes his teammates better. That sounds a whole lot similar to that guy Lonzo Ball they drafted this year. He also tweeted, Laker Nation, congratulations on drafting D'Angelo Russell, who I think is a future superstar. So after 2 seasons of, okay, maybe he's not as great as we thought he was going to be this early on, at 21 years old, they're ready to pull the plug on him. Why are we so ready to pull the plug on Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine?
I think more than anything, and I want to get back to the Chicago trade before I touch on the Lonzo Ball, D'Angelo Russell debacle. It still doesn't excuse the fact that they're trading away a guy that they gave $16.5 million a year to be the face of the franchise. And like I said, 3-and-D players, these guys are rare to find these days. 3-and-D players are hard to find. They're not easy to come across, and they're very, very valuable assets to teams. And they got rid of it for nothing, in my opinion. They got rid of it for nothing. I think Gar Forman is a disaster. Going on with the D'Angelo Russell situation, I don't think that I don't think Magic trading him away is a lack of belief in his basketball talent. Because I think deep down, Magic Johnson knows that D'Angelo Russell is a good basketball player and has the potential to be a good basketball player. It is more so the off-the-court issues that led him to be traded. And when the situation arose that he could clear cap space by getting rid of Mozgov, and he says, who am I getting rid of? Brandon Ingram? Or am I getting rid of D'Angelo Russell, who has caused more drama in my locker room than most players cause in a locker room throughout their career?
Okay, time out.
I'm getting rid of D'Angelo Russell. I don't want that distraction on my team. I don't want him to interfere with who people believe Lonzo Ball. I almost said LeVar. Lonzo Ball, I think, is going to be an extreme talent in the NBA.
And there's no point in not knowing that D'Angelo Russell is going to be an extreme talent. And he's averaging 15 points per game through his first 2 seasons. Better than Kawhi, better than James Harden.
And again, I don't think Magic does not believe that. I think Magic Johnson believes that he is going to be a good NBA player. I really do. In my mind, though, Magic Johnson, similar to what Vlade Divac said when they got rid of DeMarcus Cousins, which I still believe this statement to be a little nonsensical and not believable, they're trying to set a precedent on their culture now. That their culture is not going to be these guys who are here and get absorbed by the limelight and are taking pictures or videos on their phone and putting them out to social media and on TMZ. That is not what Magic Johnson wants. Magic Johnson wants guys, and he said it in a quote, like the Showtime Lakers, these guys are here to play ball, and if they're not here to play ball, they're not going to be on my team.
All right, now that's one way of looking at it, to blame D'Angelo Russell and say, okay, this guy's not mature enough. But I'm 100% putting the blame on the Lakers as an organization. Now, look, at 21 years old, I don't really know from a maturity aspect what you're expecting out of D'Angelo Russell. I mean, look, that's if you take me or you put him on the Los Angeles Lakers, the second biggest media market in the NBA, and you're like, okay, don't mess up. Now, keep in mind, let's look at who's in that Lakers locker room last season. Like, who is D'Angelo Russell learning from? Is it Swaggy P? Is it like if you're willing to keep that guy around in your locker room for all those years, and by the way, he ended up opting out of his deal this year. Why are you so willing to pull the plug on Russell? Now, look, if you're saying Lonzo Ball is such a good player, he's such a transcendent player that he's going to make everyone else around him, why don't you take the gamble that, again, under this new era of Laker basketball, why don't you take the gamble and say, okay, let's see how D'Angelo Russell plays next to Lonzo Ball. Again, D'Angelo playing as a 2-guard. And let's see how D'Angelo reacts now that the organization is starting to get serious about basketball again. There's no Kobe Bryant retirement party season. There's no more Timothy Mozgov missed contract, but obviously that was because D'Angelo was gone. But if you're the Lakers, why don't you take ownership for Russell instead of giving up on his talents as a player and say, okay, I know he may not be the most mature, but let's try and fix that. I want to give you a good example. I was working on a show called Speak for Yourself. I'm working on at Fox Sports this summer, and Ray Lewis was a guest on the show, and he was talking about his early years in Baltimore. And he said flat out, again, this is one of the best football players of all time, one of the greatest linebackers in the game, that he would not have been the player he was, and he might not have made it that far into his career without the leadership and mentorship from older players on the Ravens, such as Shannon Sharp was the example he gave. How could you possibly have expected anything more from D'Angelo Russell in the 2 seasons he was in L.A.? Who was there for him to learn from in that locker room? He's 21 years old. The fact that they were willing to pull the plug on him now, after 2 years, when he could have played next to Lonzo Ball. Lonzo and D'Angelo could have been the backcourt of the future. It's embarrassing for the Lakers.
Again, we're talking about this idea of maturity in the locker room. He had Kobe Bryant to look up to in his first year, and I know there was a lot of drama going on with the whole Kobe Bryant retirement tour. There's something to be said, however, about handling the way you handle the limelight, and he handled it poorly. And he is now shipped to basketball Siberia as a punishment.
Wait. Has Lonzo Ball handled the limelight so spectacularly? It's a joke what him and his father are doing.
I don't think he's doing anything. He is quiet, and
He's quiet?
He is more quiet than his father is.
There's already more talk about Lonzo Ball than any other player in the league, and he hasn't played a single game.
That's more so because of his dad.
I mean, if you want to talk about distractions...
Don't say his dad is...
That's the baggage.
That is his baggage, but that's not what he is going to bring personally as a person.
He's doing shoe deals where he's openly... shoe commercials where he's openly joking about his dad. Clearly, he's bringing the attention on himself.
Here's the thing. Lonzo Ball is about basketball. D'Angelo Russell got stuck in the limelight, and he lost his way.
He's 21 years old.
There's no excuse for things that he did, especially the Nick Young incident. I understand. Swaggy P, looking up to Swaggy P is the equivalent of looking up... I can't even make a comparison without sounding inappropriate on the air. It's not a good mix. But at the end of the day, Magic Johnson saw the opportunity to clear cap space because they are looking into next year's free agency. And look, if I could take Paul... basically what he said, I'm either going to have Paul George, because they're going to get Paul George next year. But it seems like a given. They're either going to get Paul George, or I'm going to keep D'Angelo Russell. I think it had to be done in order to clear that massive contract that Timothy Mozgov had consumed. And maybe it's not going to turn out well. You might, for all we know, D'Angelo Russell could go out for the Brooklyn Nets this year, average 25 and 8, and be an all-star. And there's Magic Johnson sitting on his chair being like, wow, I messed up. But for all we know, he could go out and lay an egg, and he could have another mix-up. It could be D'Angelo Russell caught on this in TMZ.
I agree shedding the Mozgov contract was big for the Lakers, but my counter-argument is, why the urgency? Why are they so desperate to shed $16 million a year when they're not competing for a championship, yet alone a playoff spot in the next season or two? They would have had the money to sign Paul George anyway. And if they thought, okay, we have a serious shot at getting LeBron James, where I don't think he's going to L.A., then I understand you're so desperate to shed D'Angelo just to get rid of the Mozgov contract. But anyway, I want to go back to the point of the Golden State Warriors effect. And this goes back to my argument in the sense that the league is in chaos right now. Nobody seemingly knows what to do. I want to even use the San Antonio Spurs for an example, one of the most respected organizations in the league. Last season, in an attempt to, again, better compete with the Warriors, they signed LaMarcus Aldridge. 1 year later, they're willing to pull the plug on the guy.
2 years later.
Sorry, 2 years later. An experiment that clearly didn't work out. And now we're hearing rumors that the San Antonio wants to add a Chris Paul, against someone that's going to bolster their chances of beating the Warriors. These moves, in my opinion, and I'm sure you're going to agree, are uncharacteristic of the Spurs. They're a team in the past that has wanted to wait it out to see their young core players further develop. Obviously, Kawhi now is approaching the prime of his, or is in the prime of his career. It would be interesting to see some of the other guys develop. But again, San Antonio may be going into extreme win now mode if they get the chance to get Chris Paul. So I just want to say this really quick. I think the Golden State Warriors effect is going to affect NBA free agency in two ways. Number one, I think teams are going to say, why should we be willing to spend tons of money on superstars when they're still not going to help us beat the Warriors? The San Antonio Spurs might be the only exception. And then the counter argument is, if you're a superstar player like a Gordon Hayward with the opportunity to play for a supermax, you say, why would I leave my organization to take $30 to $50 million less money when I'm going to go to an organization that still isn't going to be able to beat the Warriors? So that transitions to Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. Because of the Golden State Warriors effect, I do not think either of these two guys leave.
See, that's where I disagree with you on that, and I agree. What San Antonio has been doing lately is uncharacteristic. Being from San Antonio, growing up a Spurs fan, knowing, I don't want to say the ins and outs, they're not acting the way they are, but they also see the writing on the wall, that if they don't act quickly, they can't afford to wait 3 years, because for all we know, 3 years from now, Golden State might have another 3 rings. Because every team in the league is terrified that you're about to see maybe the most dominant dynasty in the NBA ever. And so they see the writing on the wall, and they want to act now. They see a Kawhi Leonard who's about to enter a prime that I think could last for a very long time. People consider him maybe to be the second best player in the league behind LeBron James. A lot of the guys on TNT do. So they see the writing on the wall, and they understand that if they had the opportunity to add a Chris Paul to a Kawhi Leonard, and if LaMarcus Aldridge is on the roster next year, This is the same team that, had Kawhi Leonard not gone down, I really do think it would have been a series against Golden State. They were up by 25 on the road. They're firing on all cylinders, and your best player goes down and they lose. They would not have gotten swept. I think they would have lost in 6. But it would have been competitive, and it would have had Golden State and their fans on the edge of their seats and their backs against the walls, very, very worried. But I want to transition into the free agency now. I think Chris Paul is very 50-50. I think in a way, though, he needs to see the writing on the wall, similar to the San Antonio Spurs. He's not winning a championship in Los Angeles. He will end his career a ringless superstar if he stays in Los Angeles.
But he's gonna end up a ringless superstar wherever he goes. He's not winning in San Antonio because at the end of the day, he's a ball-centric point guard in a league where you can't succeed with a ball-centric point guard. Look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. They couldn't get it. They had the best player in the league supposedly this season, or as we'll find out tonight, and they couldn't get past the first round.
They also didn't have a supporting cast. When you put Chris Paul on a team where you're able to dish the ball around to a guy like Danny Green, a guy like Kawhi Leonard, a guy like Pau Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge, and then you come off the bench and you bring excellent role players that mold into the San Antonio Spurs form, I think it could be a very, very interesting experiment. And I'll go out and say this, and I talked to you about it before the show. As a Spurs fan, I don't want him. I have full belief that next year, after this year, DeJounte Murray will be the point guard for the San Antonio Spurs, and I have full faith that he will be very, very talented. I think Chris Paul is 32 years old. He's exiting the prime of his career. He's very injury prone. He's never delivered for the Clippers. So I'll say it. I don't want him. If we get him,
well, I'm going to tell you why it doesn't matter. There is no way that Chris Paul doesn't re-sign with the Clippers for one reason. He wants that 5th-year Supermax. And you're, on one end, you're going to say, if I'm Los Angeles, why do I give an aging Chris Paul a 5-year Supermax deal? And there's one reason why. They're moving into a new stadium. They have to be able to sell season tickets. It's now or never, unfortunately, for the Clippers because they're not going to beat this Golden State Warriors team ever, no matter what they do. But let me ask you a question.
By the way, it's never for the Clippers.
Let me ask you a question.
Now.
And I know you're going to come out and criticize the Clippers organization over the past 3-4 years, 5 years, ever since Doc Rivers got there. But if you're the Clippers and you have 3 top 20 players in the NBA, how can you possibly be doing a better job? What else could you be doing? I mean, okay, you can make the argument you could be doing a little bit more of what the Spurs are doing, but they just got steamrolled. Kawhi Leonard or not, they just got steamrolled by the Warriors. They're no more closer than the Clippers are, in my opinion.
Completely disagree with you.
But again, if you're the Clippers, look how unlucky they've gotten the last 2 seasons. The last 2 postseasons, obviously, not so much this season. They weren't the same team as they were 2 years ago. If they don't lose Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, I think they make a really good run in that playoffs.
By the way, I think Chris Paul is 50-50. I think Blake Griffin's gone.
Chris Paul is not leaving $30 to $50 million on the table to play for a team where he's still not going to win a championship.
I think Chris Paul is 50-50. I think Blake Griffin is out of there. And I want to transition.
Based on what?
I think Blake Griffin is gone. I think Blake Griffin sees the opportunity to leave
on what source?
A very volatile situation. This is an own personal opinion. I think he's gone.
How is this a volatile situation?
It's a volatile situation when you have a guy like Doc Rivers who is running this organization to the ground. Doc Rivers, to me, is the most overrated executive / coach, and we've seen it before, with the exception of Greg Popovich. When there's the head coach / president of operations, it doesn't work well. It never really has. Ever. And you're seeing it with Doc Rivers. And this is where I want to transition, and I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And I'll make a quick concession. The Los Angeles Clippers have been delivered some of the most unlucky situations for a team. But they have dug themselves a Silence of the Lambs deep hole. This is a team right now that is on. They're going to lose Jamal Crawford for sure. They're going to lose J.J. Redick for sure because they're not going to have the money or the assets to sign them if they're trying to sign Blake Griffin and Chris Paul. I think we can both agree on that, right?
Yes.
Doc Rivers is to blame for this entire situation. And I understand when you lose your players, it's hard to come up big. But I want to take you back to Los Angeles, Game 6, 2015. You're up 19 points in the third quarter, and you lose. and then you lose the series to the Houston Rockets. That team has never been able to bounce back. That team has never gotten past the second round of the playoffs. And right now, you are now looking at a Clippers team on the verge of implosion. Doc Rivers has lost himself in the idea, just because he won a championship with the Boston Celtics and what I consider to be one of the weakest points in the NBA that we've seen in a very long time. They put this full trust in him. It's a very Julius Caesar type situation. They handed him the keys to the kingdom, and now he's refusing to give up the power, and soon there's going to be a mutiny, and that mutiny is going to result in a firing. And I'm trying to find my notes, because it's all a disaster in front of me right now. But I want to touch on it.
But here's where you're just being naive. You can blame Doc Rivers, but what's the alternative? What franchise in the NBA who doesn't have LeBron James or the Golden State Warriors roster is doing it any better?
Here's the thing. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about things done in the past. Why are you going after... They went after DeAndre Jordan. We all know about the DeAndre Jordan situation where they locked him inside the house and they didn't let him leave. DeAndre Jordan is about to be a thing of the past in the NBA. He can't shoot. He has very little offensive ability. The only good part about his game is his rolling to the basket and his defense. He's one of the best rolling to the basket big men. You're looking at an NBA now that is relying on spreading the floor around, and you're trying to shoot threes.
Oh, so you're saying it was the same mistake that the Spurs made by signing LaMarcus Aldridge?
LaMarcus Aldridge can spread the floor and shoot jump shots.
Actually, I don't know what you've been watching the last two seasons.
LaMarcus Aldridge was averaging 25 points a game and was one of the premier back down, post up, mid range jumpers for a big man in the league, similar on a level to Dirk Nowitzki.
And DeAndre Jordan's been an all-star.
And DeAndre Jordan can't shoot. DeAndre Jordan was not an all-star. DeAndre Jordan got his first All-Star appearance this year. So what I'm saying to you is this. DeAndre Jordan, while might be a good asset on a team, is about to be useless in a league that is becoming so three-point heavy where your centers can shoot threes or power forwards can shoot three. You know who was playing the power forward for the Golden State Warriors? Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant was the power forward for the Golden State Warriors. Kevin Durant. And in a lineup, when they brought in Iggy, he sometimes played the 5, or Draymond Green played the 5. The league is turning into a huge league where all you're doing is shooting the ball, and three-point shooting is so necessary. And I just don't understand why Doc Rivers sees this need to have to go after DeAndre Jordan. And that was in a different time when now the writing is, I like using this term today, I don't know why. The writing was very much on the wall, not as much then. They have not gotten past the second round with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan.
The Clippers are a victim of unfortunate circumstances.
What's unfortunate about signing guys like Austin Rivers and Luke Mbah-a-Moute and Wesley Johnson and Nate Robinson?
If you look at any other period of basketball in the NBA and you had 3 top 20 players, you got a real good shot to win an NBA championship. And here's the thing. The Clippers, if you don't think the Clippers recognize that they made a mistake in DeAndre Jordan, you're right. But like I said, they don't have a choice. They don't have a choice for 2 reasons. Number one, they can't do anything better because no one else is doing anything better. No one else is going to sniff the Golden State Warriors unless you're LeBron James. And
I think at this point...
And number 2, again, they're moving into a new stadium. They have to retain their All-Stars. They got to sell season tickets.
I still think at this point, though, and I think we agree on that, they're in a no-win situation.
But who isn't stuck?
But I think they're more stuck...
Do you do what the Boston Celtics are doing?
They're more stuck
do you sit on 7 first-round draft picks?
But they're more stuck in a situation of this and the fact that we're looking back now at the fact that they couldn't win championships before Golden State went on this massive... Where the Golden State Warriors are where they are now, they're relying on aging stars, and they're doing the same thing over and over again, hoping the outcome becomes different. It's the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Insanity. They are relying on the same formula that has not delivered them a championship in the past and hoping all of a sudden it will. I think... Obviously, they're in a situation now where they're too deep. They can't go anywhere from here. But they're in a situation now where they've set themselves up to where they're going to lose their superstars.
You can't name me one team in the NBA other than the Warriors or the Cleveland Cavaliers who is doing it right. You can't. I don't care how good you think your San Antonio Spurs are. They're not close. They are not close. And at the end of the day, we can blame the Clippers and say Doc Rivers hasn't done the best job. Yeah, sure, he signed Big Baby Davis and his son to a contract way too big than they would have gotten anywhere else. But
Doc Rivers has not set this. This is more than anything. Doc Rivers has not set up their team for success.
But this is where it doesn't matter because no other organization. Look, the Atlanta Hawks, they're fire sailing. The Boston Celtics, they're holding on to 7 first-round picks instead of getting Jimmy Butler for trash or Paul George because nobody knows the answer. You can point the finger at the Clippers. I agree, they're not a model organization. But who's doing it better? And there is no answer.
They're a dumpster fire. Doc Rivers has done nothing in the past to set the team up for success today.
Who's doing it better? Why are the Spurs any better positioned for success? They're not.
Because they don't have guys. They are.
They're not.
Because they're not staring at a DeAndre Jordan max contract in the face. And
they're staring at a LaMarcus Aldridge max contract in the face.
Is still more valuable asset than DeAndre Jordan.
If that were true, they would have moved him by now.
Here's the thing. DeAndre Jordan is now useless when it comes to offense. They can't use him on offense. They can't. The only thing he can do is play defense and have a rolling protection to the rim.
You're beating a dead horse. You're beating a dead horse. We both agree that the Clippers are not a model organization and they made mistakes. I agree. But there isn't much of a better answer unless you're the Timberwolves or you're the Philadelphia 76ers and you put all your ammo in 5 years down the road from now. But let's make a quick transition to what's been dominating my Facebook newsfeed.
Doc Rivers needs to be fired.
For the past week. And that is the ESPN Body Issue. Now look, I'm a big fan of magazines changing it up every now and then, the biggest example being the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. But I can't quite grasp my head around the ESPN Body Issue. I opened up my Facebook last night, and the first thing that catches my eye is a photo of Isaiah Thomas, butt naked, smiling with a huge grin, holding a basketball over his junk.
Makes me really uncomfortable.
And I'm just not quite sure who appreciates the ESPN Body Issue. Like,
the only way I can see someone appreciating it is like in the way that I'm going to put this in this way. Athletes are physical specimens, so they just want to see what their bodies look like. People just want to see what a physically gifted person, what their body looks like. It's a little too much for me. The last thing I really want to see in the morning when I'm tired and I'm groggy, I don't want to open up a magazine and see Vince Wilfork and his giant 350-pound body. It's just, to me, it's
350 pounds of no thank you.
And I think it's an interesting idea. I'll give them that people are fascinated with the way that their bodies are because they are, I mean, look at LeBron James. You see those videos of LeBron James working out. I mean, the guy's huge.
Yeah, I care how he plays basketball. I don't care about what his thigh muscles look like when he's flexing.
You and I are on the same point. I don't like it. Can
I tell you what my favorite one was? Because I was playing around on the website last night. You got Von Miller in a cowboy hat, glasses, pom-poms, again, butt naked. And right under is a caption to a link saying, quote, "Check out the Super Bowl MVP from every angle in a special presentation. 360 degrees of Von Miller." Ugh. Jeff, quick question. If you could see any athlete in this ESPN The Body Issue, who would it be and why? Because I've got one.
It's interesting because I was thinking about this last night when we talked about it. And I think the most physically gifted athletes are, I think seeing Aaron Judge would be quite interesting and kind of hilarious in a way that baseball players are just giants. I think Aaron Judge is an exception to that rule, too, because he is more than just a giant. I think Aaron Judge would be interesting.
Judge is a good one. I'll give you my quick answer. It's Shaquille O'Neal, because I'm just wondering just how big is the big fella's big fella. Anyway, let's transition. It's time for our newest segment. Let's tune up the music.
Best
That's right. It is time for Bold Prediction, Gary, where me, the sports take genius of all sports take geniuses, is going to give 3 bold predictions, and we are going to see what Jeffrey thinks on his BS meter. So, how this is going to work is I'm going to give 3 bold predictions, and we're going to see if he bites or not. Bold prediction number 1, the Philadelphia 76ers and the process. Jahlil Okafor, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, that guy they got last week, Markelle Fultz. That team will not advance to the Eastern Conference Finals in the next 15 years, and I'll tell you why. Because that team, well, number 1, none of those players have proven quite anything. But number 2, that team doesn't have any veteran presence on their team to mold those young players. They have 1 veteran player on that team, Gerald Henderson. I told the Ray Lewis story earlier. If you don't have the right guys in the locker room, those young players could spiral out of control. Hint, hint, wink, wink, D'Angelo Russell. Jeffrey, 76ers not going to the Eastern Conference Finals in the next 5 years. What are your thoughts?
5 or 15? 15?
Sorry, 15.
I think that's a 10 on the BS scale, to be honest. You're looking at a team that is coached very well by Brett Brown. I like him a lot. 15 years is a long time. 15 years from now, I'm going to be 36, potentially married with kids. That freaks me out, so I can't really tell. I want to go an example of a team that didn't have veteran presence, and look how they turned out today. Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, NBA champs, didn't have very big veteran presence in their locker room. They could sign free agents. I say BS on that one. They will be in the Eastern Conference Finals within the next 15 years.
Well, I'll have to agree to disagree. Bold prediction number 2. Ice Cube's Big 3 debuted yesterday, airing today on FS1. And I'm going to make a prediction as to who is going to win the Big 3 championship. I'm loving the 3-headed monsters with Captain Rashard Lewis, co-captain Jason White Chocolate Williams, which, by the way, he suffered an unfortunate hamstring injury yesterday. Really hoping he makes it back in this 10-game season because, again, if he doesn't, then my prediction's kind of skewed. We also got Kwame Brown, one of the biggest NBA busts of all time, who I think is just going to kill it in this 3-on-3 league. And Coach Gary Payton, a respected veteran champion. Jeff, what do you think about the 3-headed monsters bringing home the title in this Big 3 league?
I don't even know, man. I think this is such an interesting idea. I was taking a look at the website, looking at the teams. I'm going with the Killer Threes. Captain Chauncey Billups, co-captain Stack Jack 5, Steven Jackson, Reggie Evans, the Trash Can, Larry Hughes, Brian Cook, and player coach Charles Oakley.
I do love Charles Oakley as a player coach. I just, honestly,
I love Steven Jackson.
My pick is just completely contingent on White Chocolate making a comeback.
100%.
Like, I mean, I used to watch him growing up with the Heat, and his tattoo game, everything is on point. So you say BS once again. So BS. Third prediction. I think I might get you on this one. D'Angelo Russell will have the Lakers regretting their trade by the end of next season, and I'll tell you why. Number 1, I've already told you, I think it was a poor move to start with. I think it would have been fun to see D'Angelo Russell play next to Lonzo Ball. Number 2, I think at the end of last season, you start to see a different D'Angelo Russell than we saw in the first year and a half. And again, that was him playing in the 2 spot. He's not a pass-first guard, right? He's more of a scorer. He's more of a slasher. I think given the platform and the stage in Brooklyn in that position where we know he'll succeed, he's going to have more success. But most importantly, look, Magic Johnson has now come out publicly and trashed D'Angelo Russell, saying he's not a leader, someone you don't want in the locker room. At 21 years old, whether or not he's going to admit it or not, that carries a lot of weight. I think that is just the kick in the butt that D'Angelo Russell needs to switch a gear into him and turn him into that transcendent player that everyone thought he was 2 years ago. So I think D'Angelo Russell is going to be a really special player next season, and the Lakers are going to be like, wow, we pulled the plug way too soon.
I agree with you, but I agree for different reasons. I agree with you that he's going to have a good season because he's going to be the best player on that team. Look, I want to say it really quickly, that starting lineup. I have it on here. The starting lineup for that team next year is going to be D'Angelo Russell, Jeremy Lin, Chris Levert, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, and Timothy Mozgov. So if he's not averaging the most points per game on that team, then there's an issue. I think he's going to be very good, and I think the Lakers will regret getting rid of that talent, but only because he's thriving on a team where he is the only talent.
And I don't think that Brooklyn team is going to be any good, but I think, again, it's going to be a platform for D'Angelo Russell to really show off the talented player that he is. All right, so that was 40 good minutes of In the Trenches. I'm Garrett Schwartz. With me is Jeffrey Dubrov. We are going to take a quick break. Right after the break, we are going to have on special guest Charles Cooper, one of the hosts for The Scoop with Clausen and Coop. Again, you're listening to In the Trenches on KXSC. You could also tune in at 1560 a.m. We'll be back in just a few.
And we are back to In the Trenches. We just take a little break. On us now is Charles Cooper, a USC student, creator of the podcast The Scoop with Clausen and Coop. Charles, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course. We're really excited to have you. We just want to talk with you a little bit first. Tell us about the podcast. Tell about The Scoop, why you decided to start it, what you find most interesting about it. Just dive right in.
Yeah, sure. Basically my best friend from home, I'm from Louisiana, came to live with me in Los Angeles this summer, and we just talk about sports all the time when we're not doing anything. So we thought we might as well just put a microphone in between us. And so we started really doing stuff literally last week. Adam put together a cute little logo, and I think we're going to come out with our first episode sometime this week, probably just post it on our Facebook pages. But yeah, we don't take ourselves too seriously. I think that's the most important part. We just talk about other random stuff that we do during the summer. But yeah, it's mainly all about the NBA trade talks and free agency, the draft and all that right now, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think Garrett and I take each other a little too seriously at times. But before we had you on...
I'm a hot take expert. I don't know about you.
Very debatable. So before we had you on, we were talking Jimmy Butler, the Jimmy Butler trade. I'm sure, as you know, patience with young stars in the NBA and the idea of the face of the franchise. So quickly, Charles, I wanted to ask you, what is your take on the Jimmy Butler trade? Do you think it was good for the Chicago Bulls? Do you think the Chicago Bulls lost the trade? And what do you think of this idea that we dub these players the face of the franchise, and the next thing we know, that so-called face of the franchise is no longer the face of that franchise?
Yeah, well, regarding the trade first, I think it's keep it simple. Usually in the NBA, whoever gets the best player wins the trade. And so the Timberwolves got the best player. The Bulls got back, you could argue, good pieces, but, unknown pieces. It's too early to tell. And that goes into, the next question. With all these young stars, people already writing off, Chris Dunn, because he had, one mediocre rookie season. It's, we were talking about D'Angelo going to Brooklyn and how, the Lakers are already done with him after 2 years ago they thought he was going to be the next stud. And, Jahlil Okafor is the same way. They thought he was going to be the face of the franchise. The Lakers are talking about drafting him being the next Shaq. And now he's already, 22? He's our age, and now he's already not a good player anymore. It's kind of the trend of, throwing away, these pieces that you drafted 2 years ago. And it's really too early to tell. Markelle Fultz, I heard in an interview, he's obviously supposed to be a star, but he's literally 2 years younger than us. He went to prom last year. I think, NBA execs are just getting so impatient with these young guys.
And right, that goes into the D'Angelo Russell trade. We were talking about that earlier. Jeffrey's of the opinion D'Angelo Russell, at 21 years old, too much of a problem in the locker room to keep around. Maturity questions. Obviously I'm not going to say he's a role model in the locker room, but I'd say at 21 years old, his talent and his upside far outweighs his locker room problems. What did you make of that trade? Do you think the Lakers pulled the plug too early again on a young asset, number 2 overall pick just 2 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, the Lakers are kind of obviously in a different situation than most teams because they already see a better-looking point guard in Lonzo Ball. I bet they saw, they're going to move D'Angelo over to shooting guard if they drafted him anyways, but they've already got Jordan Clarkson. So they thought, whatever, we'll cut ties because we, how much they love Lonzo. But I agree in that regard. I think it's too early to tell. This dude could still be in college if he didn't go out of the draft. He's so young. The talent's there. I mean, he's averaged 15 and 4.5 last year or something like that. As a 21-year-old, I think there's still so much upside, and it's just way too early to tell still. I mean, I think I'd be a locker room problem too if I was in 21 playing with 30-year-olds. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I think
it would quite literally be if you were drafted by the Lakers and you were expected to be the face of the second biggest media base in the country. Ridiculous expectations.
It's so overwhelming. People don't realize that these guys are just they're dudes. They're human beings. You got to give them a chance to grow into their own.
My idea behind that trade was, I did concede to Garrett that I'm not going to say that Magic Johnson does not think that D'Angelo Russell is going to be a good player. I think when he looked at the trade and he knew he had to get rid of someone to get rid of that just atrocious Timothy Mozgov contract, he sees D'Angelo Russell, and I think he's setting a precedent more so of how he wants his culture to be, that he only wants his culture to be about basketball. And I understand, 21 years old, no one's going to be mature enough, is going to be the most mature person at 21 years old. But to be a locker room issue like he caused with the whole Nick Young incident, to me, is a little over the top. And I think when you see it, why get rid of a Jordan Clarkson who is only about basketball, and I still think has a lot of upside, when you're able to get rid of D'Angelo Russell? And obviously, I do think he's going to pan out to be a pretty. Don't interrupt. I can see the look on your face, Garrett. I just think that when you had to get rid of someone at the end of the day, Magic Johnson looked to the past and sees the past as maybe a marking point for what could happen in the future. I want to let you respond before Garrett goes.
Sure. No, I agree with you, and it's just the overall trade. The Lakers are the big winners in the trade because they got rid of Mozgov, he had a $64 million contract. He got rid of that. It was Magic's first big move, and it was a win because you get Brook Lopez off the books. So overall, the trade's a win for the Lakers, but just the in general trend of getting rid of players whenever they're 21 and they've been in the league for 2 seasons, I think is kind of overdone. It's too early to tell, but yeah, the Lakers won this trade. I don't think anyone's arguing that.
And again, I'm not really making the argument that the Lakers lost the trade. I just think I'm agreeing with you, Charles. They gave up on D'Angelo too soon. But, Jeff, you can't sit here and tell me that the Lakers are buying into just a basketball mindset when they draft 19-year-old Lonzo Ball and his big baller brand and LeVar Ball. I don't buy it. If you're going to talk about distractions, you're not getting any less of that in Lonzo Ball. So there's my point there. Tonight is the NBA Awards Show, which is, I think, it's brand new. And they're going to be giving out awards such as the Defensive Player of the Year, the Coach of the Year, as well as the NBA MVP Award. The heavy favorite coming into the night is Russell Westbrook. The other finalists include James Harden, Kawhi Leonard.
That's it.
That's it. Charles, who do you think is going to win the award? And then also, who do you think should win the award? If you could give it to anyone, finalist or not.
Well, short answer, it's Russell Westbrook, and I hate the timing of this award show because no one remembers what happened 2 months ago in the NBA. So everyone, I think, is going to have the take of it's Kevin Durant, it's LeBron James, but I think the award goes to what individual has the most impact on their team in the regular season, and that's Russell Westbrook. But I've been hearing so many people say this is just insane that Kevin Durant and LeBron aren't even on the ballot. Obviously, the argument is it the best player in the league, or is it who had the biggest impact in the regular season that one season? But for me, it's triple-double Russ. How can you not? For me, I don't know what y'all's takes are, but how can you not take that as the MVP of the regular season?
I'm going to agree with you, Charles, on that. I do think it's going to be Russell Westbrook. The problem I have with it, and I agree with you as well, that they voted before the playoffs start, because I think if they voted after the playoffs had ended, you'd be looking at LeBron James winning another MVP tonight, and or Kevin Durant winning another MVP tonight. My problem with Russell Westbrook winning it tonight... No, it's fine. My problem with Russell Westbrook winning it tonight, and I guess we're just going to go ahead and assume he's going to win it, Russell Westbrook and both James Harden individually broke and set the new turnovers in the season record. Russell Westbrook didn't make it past the first round of the playoffs, which has never happened to an MVP before. So I really, if in my opinion, if you're voting based on the three that were nominated, and I guess this is more a plug for why I think Greg Popovich should be coach of the year, is you're looking at a San Antonio Spurs team that went 61-21 with one All-Star and 4 players that went undrafted. So if you're going to talk about a guy who had the most impact on his team, I'm very, very convinced that if Kawhi Leonard is not on the San Antonio Spurs, the San Antonio Spurs fail to win 50 games.
So
Yeah, but
Nick, go ahead.
if Russ is on that team, if Russ isn't on the Thunder, they're not even going to have a winning record. I mean, and it's about the turnover argument. It's like, would you rather Russ turn the ball over, or would you rather, like, Robertson and Victor Oladipo taking 10 more shots a game? So
I totally agree with that.
Can I ask you a question really quick?
Why Leonard takes that?
So, again, I think we can all agree that the MVP is unfortunately a regular season award. But I want to ask you a question. First question being, if Russell Westbrook is not on the Thunder, do they make the playoffs? And the obvious answer is
they're
no.
like the Brooklyn Nets.
Great. Now here's my follow-up question. So that's, by the way, that's the question that all the NBA writers like to throw out there to say, oh, great, Russell Westbrook, he took this team that's trash and got them to the 5-6 seed in the West. My next question is, if you take LeBron James and you put him on the Oklahoma City Thunder instead of Russell Westbrook, is that team better than the Westbrook-led Thunder?
Oh, yeah, completely.
And that is why LeBron James, in my opinion, should be and should always be for the last 5, 6, 7 seasons the MVP in this league, because he is the best player in the league. And look, the criticism around him is you saw what happened when the Cavs and the Celtics played in the playoffs. The Cavaliers clearly far and away the better team, yet obviously finishing behind them in the standings in the regular season. And you can criticize LeBron for that, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he's the most valuable to his team of all the players. You take LeBron off the Cavs, I don't even know if they're a top 5 team in the East, right? And then if you put him on any other team other than the Golden State Warriors, they do better in the regular season than they otherwise would have.
Not a top 5 team in the East is a stretch. You still have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. And Kevin Love is a stretch, but Kyrie Irving is the best ISO player in the league right now.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Charles, we're going to move on. We're going to do a little segment with you. It's called The Blitz. I'm going to be asking you 10 questions. Some have to do with sports. Some have to do with just USC culture in general. I'm going to give you 5 seconds or less to answer. You got to be quick on your feet. We'll start with question 1 if you're ready.
All right, I'm ready.
Outside of Sam Darnold, who is USC's football secret weapon?
The linebackers.
Clay Helton, buy or sell?
Bye.
Wrong.
Number 1 athlete you'd want to see in the ESPN Body Issue. Garrett and I were talking about this before we had you on.
I've always been in love with Maria Sharapova. I know she's been on it, but Maria Sharapova.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you want to see Drew Brees naked.
Interesting. So
Drew Brees is a close second.
We were talking about 3-on-3 teams. If you had to build a 3-on-3 team of current NBA players in the league, who would be your 3-on-3 team?
Kyrie, LeBron, Karl-Anthony Towns.
Who's the last one?
Cat.
Ooh.
Interesting. I like it.
See, can I throw out really quick? LeBron, Kyrie, and Paul George. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Sorry, keep going, Jeff.
Yeah, that sounds sick too.
Blaze or Pizza Studio?
Oh, Blaze.
Thank you.
Woo! All right,
Go-to drink at the 9-0?
I guess AMF, just because you get the most for what you're paying.
Another great answer.
That's a great answer. The worst sporting event as a fan of a team that you grew up watching? The most cringeworthy?
Wait, sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
What is the most cringeworthy, worst sporting event you have had to witness as a fan of your favorite team?
Or sports moment.
Probably the New Orleans Saints losing to the Bears in the 2006 conference championship. Random, but that just always killed me.
I like that one. I remember that. Childhood sports hero?
100% Drew Brees, close second, Shaq.
Drew Brees went to the same summer camp as I did, fun fact. Backyard baseball or backyard football?
Oh, backyard baseball.
You're on point with these answers today. And the final question, your projected 2017 USC Trojan football record.
I'm going to say they win 11 games. So, was that 11-3 depending on if they go to the conference finals, conference championship or something?
So 11-1 in the regular season.
Yeah. Or I guess 11-2, I guess.
You got
11 wins in the regular season.
So you're sipping the Sam Darnold Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah, I'm sipping on it hard.
Garrett's extremely pessimistic when it comes to our team that
it's better to have lower expectations that way, because every time
shoot low and you lay 'em high.
Every time with this USC football team we like to get our hopes up. It's a waste of time and effort.
I agree with you.
Anyway, Charles, thanks so much for being on our show today. One more time, give us a plug for your podcast. What are people going to be able to tune into this next episode? Or I understand your first show is going to be coming online real soon. What are people going to be excited to hear?
It's going to be a lot about the draft recap, and then what do we think is going to happen with Paul George and free agency in this next week or so. So it's going to be NBA heavy with some of the stupid stuff we've been doing in the weekend sprinkled in.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show. We are going to take a
30-second break.
30-second break. We'll be back with you in 30 seconds. Thanks so much, Charles.
Appreciate it. Have a good one, guys.
You too. Thanks for coming on. We have 3 minutes left on today's edition of In the Trenches. Today was a good one. We had Charles Cooper. Once again, if you want to listen to his podcast, The Scoop with Clausen and Coop. I like that name. I really do. I wanted to finish off today's segment with talking about my excitement for this upcoming school year, mainly because I think, Garrett, we're about to have potentially the best USC sports year and all-around sports, without a doubt. USC football high on the rise. Everyone has high expectations, which freaks me out. But you know what I think has higher expectations for the mediocrity in the past is USC basketball. I've read a few articles that say this is a Final Four bust team. Well, I think what's interesting, and I was talking to my friend Henry about this, we are just as talented as a lot of teams, but the maturity level is there. You're bringing back juniors and seniors, and finally you get a good recruiting class. This is going to be a good sports year.
Charles O'Bannon Jr., we got Derek Thornton transferring from Duke, adding that to our top 6 leading scorers from last season.
Can you believe, Jordan McLaughlin's back, Benny Buckets, Chemezi Matu. So I think what's so funny is the reason Elijah Stewart's back is because he forgot to send his paperwork into the NBA.
Unreal.
So an unfortunate mistake by him turns out to be our fortune, I guess.
So, quick question, I think I might be going out a little too much on a limb here, but which team's more likely to win a title? USC football or USC hoops? Keep in mind that, the way football works, you lose 1 or 2 games you're not supposed to, and
That's very interesting because you bring up a good point. Luck can happen no matter what when you're in the NCAA tournament. It's hard to go against a team that's returning what many consider to be the Heisman favorite, a team that's coming off a 9-game win streak, fresh off a Rose Bowl win. I think the team more likely to win it is USC football, but at the same time, it's harder to win in football because if you lose a couple of games, you're out of it. At the same time, you got to win a lot of games to get to that point in basketball.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm still taking the football team. I just think there's too much excitement. I think the path to the playoff is going to be not too difficult for this USC team, especially because we're not playing Washington until, if both of us were to advance to the Pac-12 championship. I think scheduling-wise, we kind of got lucky. If we start off 3-0 versus Texas Stanford and Western Michigan, it's hard to count out this team.
I agree. It's hard, though. We do have no bye weeks. If we go 3-0 by destroying those teams, I think I'm all in on running the table. That is all the time we have for today. It has been a pleasure bringing you in the trenches on KXC.org, also on the airways at 1560. You can catch us next Monday. I believe Garrett will not be here, so it'll be just me and my illegitimate takes on In the Trenches with Jeffrey Dubroff and Garrett Schwartz. Have an awesome Monday. Have a good day, guys.